Hi everyone, thanks for joining today's training webinar. Today I'm going to be talking over the new Local Life products which are available in China and also Hong Kong. Local Life are small group tours that go beyond the traditional highlights. It's all about seeing the local culture and the life of the everyday people. So today we're going to talk over 4 trips in China, so it's both Shanghai and Beijing, and 2 tours in Hong Kong. So let's start in Shanghai. And the first trip I want to talk over is the Shanghai French Concession Walk. It is essentially what that title has said. It's all about getting behind the scenes of Shanghai, obviously one of the world's major cities, the economic heart of modern China. But behind the glass facades, you still have a very traditional way of life, some of the best preserved architecture in China, and the chance to see what everyday people in Shanghai do day to day. So, as all of our local life trips, it's a daily departure, and it's a morning walking tour. So it starts at 9:30 in the morning and finishes at 12:30 in the afternoon. Now, the French concession is the real fascinating part of Shanghai. It's a small winding alleyways. You can see people practicing Tai Chi, you can see amazing wet markets and great food stores. This walk is all about getting away from the traditional tourist sites and showing the real side of Shanghai that you don't always see. So it's a walking tour, it is on foot. Shanghai is obviously not the hardest place to be walking. It has clear walkways and pathways, but you're going to be walking through some pretty narrow areas, narrow alleyways. Let's start this again. Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar. Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar training. We're going to be talking over the new Local Life product line and focusing on the products now available in China and Hong Kong. Local Life are small group tours, daily departures that show clients behind the scenes of a city. The idea is to go beyond the traditional highlights, to get up close and personal with the real everyday life of local people, and to see what makes the city so special. In China, we have trips available in Shanghai and Beijing, and we have 2 tours available in Hong Kong. All 3 cities are fascinating. They have their real traditional elements and a very distinct culture. We're going to start with the Shanghai French Concession Walk. This is a morning tour, departs at 9:30 a.m. and finishes at 12:30 in the afternoon. Shanghai is an amazing city. It's obviously the economic heartland of modern China, has some superb architecture, modern architecture, and it's changed hugely over the last 20 years. But behind the large skyscrapers, the huge motorways and flyovers, you've got a city that has retained a lot of its charm and its traditional lifestyle. This is what the Shanghai French Concession Walk is all about. It's not ticking off the sights of Pudong. It's not looking at the skyscrapers and seeing the Bund. This is beyond that. This is really getting to the small alleyways, the residential districts of the French concession area of the city. The French concession is probably the most interesting part of Shanghai. It still has beautiful Art Deco architecture. You can still look down alleyways and see dumpling salesmen. You can walk through very traditional marketplaces, and that's what we've looked to capture on this morning tour. So some of the highlights of this trip, this walking trip, are to really get up close to the French concession, to go behind the scenes of the city. We also visit a local wet market, and if anyone has visited a traditional Chinese market, then it's an experience that will last a lifetime. It's a fascinating place to see how people shop, how people, what sort of food people are buying, and it's quite unlike anywhere else in Asia. As we're away from the major highlights, the aims of the walking tour is to really see the everyday people, to see how they live, and to get the chance to interact. So a couple of the ways that we do this is heading out to the Xianyang Park. It's the locals park. It's much busier than the famous Fusing Park. And you get the chance to see people exercise, to how the average Shanghai local lives their life. So you see the Tai Chi, the water calligraphy, and also dancing. It's quite a unique experience. Along the way, we also visit the Russian Orthodox Church and the famous Mansion Hotel. We try and intersperse the walking route with a chance to taste some of the flavors of Shanghai. So on this trip, you get to sample some of the egg tarts that are really famous here. And you also just see all of the different street foods and different delicacies that Shanghai is famous for. So if you have clients who want to see the real historic side of Shanghai, they want to go beyond just the traditional highlights of the city and the modern highlights of the city, this trip is the perfect introduction. Here's a few images from along the journey. Okay, the second trip I'll talk over is the Shanghai Dine Like a Local. Now this is a trip that operates again daily, starting at 7 in the evening and finishing between 9 and 9:30 in the evening. It is, as you imagine, the chance to try some of the best street food in the city. Shanghai has a very interesting, quite a unique food culture. And although the city has developed hugely over the last 20 years, there's still a lot of street food to try. When you're in China, you can be quite daunted about trying the dumplings or trying the different noodle soups. With the language barrier, it can sometimes be difficult to jump in. This trip enables people not only to taste and to enjoy Shanghai, but empowers them to go out the next day and be more confident when buying or tasting the traditional food. So the trip actually takes place in a residential area of Shanghai. Again, this is not your major tourist route. What we're trying to do is see the local life. That's the whole essence of this product line. So you'll be led through the frantic local night market. It's a pretty lively place. And you'll get to see how the locals eat each night and where they live. This is all about seeing how people live in Shanghai away from the large metropolis. It's not very well explored, this area, so it's a place that you really need a guide to show you those back streets, to show you those hidden back streets. We try a few of the real traditional dishes of Shanghai, and clients have the chance to ask questions with the guide, to maybe change the route depending on what they're interested in at that point. So as I say, this is a daily departure, starting at 9 in the evening. 7 in the evening and finishing at 9 in the evening. Here's a few images. Okay, so we've covered Shanghai and the 2 local life tours in the city. Heading north to Beijing. Beijing, obviously the capital of China, is a very different city from Shanghai. Whereas Shanghai has the small back streets and the It's quite a cramped city. You know, its space is at a premium. Beijing is a huge place. It has some very distinctive areas. It still has the narrow alleyways of the hutongs, but it has a very different food culture, and it has a very different culture in general. The first trip I will talk over is Gourmet Beijing Ghost Street. Ghost Street is one of the city's most famous and vibrant street food markets. It has everything that you can imagine on offer. This tour will depart at 6:30 in the evening, and it will finish at 9. Again, this is a daily departure. The aims of this tour is to, again, let clients sample the amazing food of the city. Along the way, you'll try spicy crayfish, you'll have pulled pork noodles, and see a traditional barbecue restaurant. These are the real famous dishes of the north of China. And of course, the most famous of them all, Peking duck. And you get to see how it's cooked. Peking duck is an art form in Beijing, and it is a real local institution. This tour is on foot, but it's very easy walking. It's a leisurely schedule, it's a leisurely trip. You're not going to be walking miles and miles and miles. It's a very easy way of getting to know a very large and difficult city. Beijing is not the easiest place to get away from the crowds, and this is what we're trying to do on this tour. You get to see real local markets, food markets, I should say, food stalls, but you're doing it in a relatively small area. So it's a comfortable pace, and it works well for people of all fitness levels. Here's a few images of Ghost Street. And the famous Peking duck. Okay, so the second trip in Beijing is one of my real favorites. This is the Beijing Backstreets Tour. Again, the names are pretty self-explanatory here, but as I've said, Beijing is a city that can sometimes be pretty daunting. When you see the scale of the place, and you're walking in Tiananmen Square, or you're walking in the central part of the city, it can be difficult to know where do people actually live here. It's a huge place. It's very difficult to get to the parts of town that the locals live. What we've created here is a walking tour through the hutongs. The hutongs are the small residential area of central Beijing. It has all sorts of things happening. It's a commercial area, residential area, small back streets with markets and local traders. It's still the heart of the city. And although it's changed over the years, when you're in the hutongs, you're stepping back in time. This walking tour, again, is a daily departure. You depart at 9:30 in the morning and you finish at 12:30 in the afternoon. The route is very manageable. Again, we're not talking about walking miles and miles and miles. The idea is that it's a comfortable, leisurely pace with some interesting stops along the way. A couple of the real standouts here are trying some of the flavors of Beijing. So one is picking up a cup of suan nai, which is a traditional fermented milk drink that you see all over Beijing. We also visit a couple of the old snack shops and get to try some of the local specialities. This is not a food tour, but you can't be in Beijing and not eat food. It's part of the everyday culture. So we break up the walking with some stops, some interesting conversations, talking to the locals. That's what this trip's all about. We'll also be meeting and visiting a family home of the cricket master. And this is a guy who is essential to the cricket fighting, which is a sport in Beijing. It's quite a unique and authentic pastime, which hasn't changed much over the years. The Hutong area of Beijing is also close to a number of relatively small lakes, Beihai Lake, and on the route, we get to see obviously the locals fishing, swimming, exercising, depending on the time of year that you're traveling. This is a really special trip and shows the Beijing that we all love. This is not just the Forbidden City. It's not about pushing through large crowds of tourists. This is about seeing the real Beijing, seeing how the people live and seeing how little life has actually changed at the heart of the city. This is Beihai. This is one of the lakes we were talking about. You can see the fishermen and some of the small restaurants and cafes that line the lakes. Okay, so we've looked over China and we've looked at 4 different trips in Shanghai and Beijing. In Shanghai, we have the French concession walking tour, and we also have Shanghai Dine Like a Local. In Beijing, we've talked over the Ghost Street walking and food tour in the evening, and looked at Beijing back streets, the trip through the hutongs, the real old part of the city. So moving right down south to Hong Kong. We have 2 trips in Hong Kong that I will talk about today. Now, Hong Kong, it doesn't take much imagination to think what Hong Kong is all about. It's a very dense, very modern, very traditional society. And again, very distinct from Shanghai and Beijing. Different language, different food, different culture, different lifestyle. The first trip I want to talk about is the back streets of Hong Kong. And again, this is local life. We want to see the back streets. We want to see what everyday Cantonese are doing. There's a few really special inclusions on this tour. The trip will operate Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. And the tour starts at 8:45 in the morning and finishes just after 1 in the afternoon. Some of the standout experiences here. The first is villain hitting, and this is something which is pretty unique to Hong Kong. And if anyone has ever traveled to Hong Kong, you may have seen the ladies who sit below walkways with small shrines. Villain hitting is a very traditional way of putting curses on your enemies. Now, this is not something that everyone has to be doing, but it's a culture which is very unique to the city, and we get the chance to see up close what takes place here. We also take a ride on the old tram system of Hong Kong. Hong Kong has some amazing local transport. The trams rattle their way around Hong Kong Island, and you get some of the great views from the upstairs windows. It doesn't feel like you're in the 21st century when you're on one of the old trams, and to see the everyday people of Hong Kong use these trams, and that's what we want our clients to be doing as well. We also visit a traditional local market, and you also see the difference between modern and old Hong Kong. It's pretty remarkable that you can have some of the world's greatest buildings and tallest skyscrapers next door to places like the Xinguang Temple. It's this mix that makes Hong Kong such a fascinating place to spend 1, 2, 3 days. Finish up with a visit to an old public house, and we get to see how people play mahjong. The old houses of Hong Kong is really where the life happens. Behind the closed doors, you have warrens of small residential apartments. And on this trip, we get the chance to actually go inside to see how the everyday Cantonese live and to see the game of mahjong. It may take a little bit longer than 1 day to learn to play properly, but it's certainly part of the real Cantonese culture. And we want to give our clients that opportunity to see. So this is the back streets of Hong Kong tour. Here's a few images. This is the old tram. You can see that little has changed with the old wooden framed windows. And some of the small back streets. Okay, on to our second trip in Hong Kong. This is Hong Kong Street Eats. Like all of our local life trips, this is all about seeing the real culture, and the real culture all over Asia is food. You can't visit any city, if it's in Vietnam, it's in Malaysia, Singapore, China, and here Hong Kong, without trying the food. And every dish is different. Every food is in each region has its own variables, its own culture, its own specific flavors. The Hong Kong street eats is the same as that. What we aim to do is empower our clients to go out and try some of the unique dishes, to feel confident to eat and to order. So again, this trip operates on a Monday, Tuesday and Thursday, and departs at 5 in the afternoon and finishes at 9 in the evening. So a couple of the real highlights of this tour. Again, you see the Wan Chai local market, so you get to see a real thriving, bustling local market in Hong Kong. It's quite a lot different from the large skyscrapers that are surrounding it. We try all sorts of dishes along the way. Egg waffles and milk tea. We have a visit to a Dai Pei Dong pop-up stall to see what everyday people in Hong Kong are eating. We also try clay pot rice, which is a very typical Hong Kong dish. This is again a walking tour. The route is very comfortable and it's accessible for people of all ages. All you need is some confidence to try the dishes. So here's a couple of images. These are the very traditional waffles. You see this all over the city. You see this all over China actually. But the Hong Kong waffles are pretty spectacular. And the clay pots. So this is local life, China and Hong Kong. These trips, we believe, show people beyond the highlights, the really real sides of the cities, the chance to get away from crowds, talk to locals, to interact with the people that your clients want to meet, to get experiences that you can't find with a normal tour. You have experiences that go beyond the guidebooks, having access to local houses, trying the dishes that our team in Hong Kong, our team in Beijing and in Shanghai, the dishes that they eat, the dishes that are their favorites. This is what local life's all about, and that's what we put together for China. So we can only recommend that local life is the way to go with Beijing and Hong Kong. Okay, if you have any questions, you can contact your local sales office and they'll be sure to send you some more information, full itineraries and costings. Okay, thanks very much.